Ladies and gentlemen, as I say in the post on my website, which I've already started, I'm very excited for this interview. The woman above me here is Britt Elders. Britt, hello. It's nice to have you here today on the Promise Review,
Oh,
Victor the Light.
thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to it.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Pleiades has been very near and dear to my heart since I was 17 years old. When I started having experiences with Fred Bell, in terms of ship sightings and other things. I spoke a lot with Britt about this yesterday. I'm not going to go into that. I want this to be about Britt today and exploring her deep knowledge. For those of you who don't know, I'm going to share um, a picture with you here of the new book that she has right now out. So you check this out. We're blowing your mind here, but we should be seeing the actual UFO contact from the Pleiades book. Um, did that disappear or is that still up?
It's there.
Okay. So this is the UFO contact from the Pleiades. This is a two-volume set. After 45 years, she brilliantly put this together in a new book, and we're going to be discussing that today. First, I'd like to go through a little bit of what's coming up for me. For those of you who can understand that I'm going to be working with Dr. Raymond Keller, myself, and of course the Venusian Omnek, who wrote the book with Wendell Stevens, actually, From Venus I Came. And she's written two other books. The second one is Angels Don't Cry. And I cried like a baby in that one. And then we had the third one is My Message. That's available on my website, thepromiserevealed.net. And that workshop is going to be June 28th through July 3rd in Mount Shasta, California. I have a beautiful Airbnb down by a river, and we're only going to have 40 people. We can sleep 12 people on site, and we have two other cabins across the way that'll allow people to do it. It's going to be for 5 days. The pricing, all the information, but it's going to be a completely different than my very large, 10 speakers or 12 speakers at Mount Shasta, constantly running. We have the vendors outside. This is going to be a very small, intimate retreat. And I'm very much looking forward to a relaxed atmosphere, a vibration of meditation. Omnek will be speaking every day, answering questions. We got a beautiful 40-foot, or actually probably 60-foot long yoga room. We can fit 40 to 50 people. We'll probably have about 45 with support crew. So keep that on your calendar. We're going to be going to sacred sites, group meals, yoga every day, musicians, sound baths, meditation instruction. We're going to be playing information about telos and many other things that have sometimes a little more esoteric that people aren't really able to focus on in a big room with all the activity going on. So this is a smaller group that's designed to uh, inculcate a presence of reverence and respect for nature and understanding the important mission of our space family friends. Uh, the Pleiades, the Venusians are going to be our focus, and I'm going to be sharing things about the Pleiades as well, of course, their technology. So um, that's one of the things that we're going to be doing this summer, June 28th. Raymond may be coming out here and joining me for the event um, in that we're going to do in San Francisco at the MUFON event. We don't know if it's the solstice um, of June. I'm sorry, in the solstice of March around the 21st weekend, or it might be pushed to the 28th at the end there. We're going to be doing that. We're also going to be doing a three Venusians tour or two Venusians tour. Omnek will not be out, but Raymond and I've arranged some speaking engagements in Laguna Beach, in uh, Calabasas, I'm working on San Francisco, and I have a possibility in Los Angeles. But if anyone wants to support and has an idea, we're offering basically we want to come in and do a 2 hour lecture on a Friday night, and then if there's enough interest, we'd like to do a whole day on Saturday. Very low priced, just Raymond and I talking and sharing the message. This is not about a money-making event in this sense. We want to get the information out. Raymond is working on his autobiography. I've told you all many times, the Venusians told him he's going to translate this year, which means either A, they'll come down, they'll put his memories on his head about a week before, and then he'll die naturally, and his consciousness will be reinstated in a clone of his other body at the age of 15 or 17, an avatar body. The Pleiadians, of course, have this ability to do this. So this is kind of a common type of thing. The Corindorians, I've spoken about this in the past, but there's so much to learn um, uh, from Raymond and his books. It's on his 13th book since 2015. Much of it based on his history of the Akashic Records. So Raymond and I are going to be traveling together before he translates. I'm figuring it'll be at least after the conference in June and July, but he can go anytime. And folks, he has promised me he's going to visit me and allow a picture, let me take a picture of him um, in his ascended body. And finally, I'm going to announce here again that Raymond has told me that Alon, the security chief, um, wants me to tell people that in July 4th, in 2026, there will be fleets of ship above this mountain stationed, posing, much like you'll see in the Billy Meier photos. Um, where they come and make a pose and let you take pictures and do that little activity there. This will also take place in Sedona and in Wyoming on that same day. I'm planning on doing a larger conference in 2026 where we'll be able to see them when they come out and get our videos and photographs. And I might be up earlier in the morning just in case, but this is going to be a worldwide phenomenon. I think a lot of changes are going to take place this year. The Venusians have termed this year the year of liberation and resurrection. I mean, 2025. So we're looking forward to a lot of things, and many people are speaking of more contacts and things going forward. So now I'm going to read our hallowed guests information here um, uh, from her bio. I'm going to start with the bio. So it says, so just so you know, that Britt has been around. I've seen her picture for years. I've always been excited to meet them. And I know I have met Jim Delatoso and of course Wendell Stevens and I were close since 1979. He was sending us this thing. So this is Britt Elders, the um, I guess we'll say widow of Lee Elders, who was another primary investigator along with Wendell Stevens and Tom Welch. Brett Elders is an investigative author and documentary filmmaker who traveled the world exploring a variety of topics, including the mysterious world of UFOs. She has participated in several in-depth investigations. The Billy Meier case, um, that's the primary focus here, and that's kind of understated, and the waves of UFO sightings in Mexico, which began in 1991 and continue to today. She's the CEO of ShirleyMacLaine.com, and she continues to research and write for herself and others. I believe you have some other books too that you've just come out on your own, correct?
That's right. I wrote 3 books last year, all on very different topics. UFO Contact from the Pleiades, Volume 1 and Volume 2. We put those together and did a forward and afterword for it. I wrote a book called A Happy Move with my friend Deborah Jacobs that is everything you could possibly want to know about moving. And it gives you all the checklists and everything in it. It's really terrific. And then I wrote one called Another Step Up the Mountain. which is about an extreme sports adventurous. She's amazing. Her name is Deanette Wells, and she's climbed the seven summits.
Wow.
She's raced unbelievable ultra races all around the planet, been part of eco challenges, quite an amazing woman.
Mhm. Well, thank you for that. Keep an eye. I'm putting all of her links here. She's got a Facebook, a LinkedIn. This will be on my website. This is going as a post after this. I'm already preparing it. I'm going to publish this, and many of you will get this on, I guess today is the 12th. You'll get this in the morning on the 13th, along with another interview and information there. We are going to have more information as I prepare for the conference coming up. So, excuse me, I'm gonna just mute myself for a second. I get a little drink here. Everyone's getting cold here in Mount Shasta. That's supposed to have a big storm here, and my friend goes, "Oh, can you get me some cold care?" I went down there; it wasn't there. He goes, "It's got to be there," and I said, "No." And I said, "Maybe it's." I saw an empty space, so it was probably there. And I got the it's like a ray of sun from the Dendara temple with the little lines coming down above me. I don't know what kind of phenomenon that is, but I have some pictures in
Just sparkly.
the doorway of the sun and Tiwanaku. There was a whole bunch of those lines, kind of interesting. So let's get back to this amazing biography here, the book description. For the first time in 45 years after original publication, the two photojournal volumes of UFO Contact from the Pleiades are combined in one book for modern audience with a new foreword written by Shirley MacLaine, a prologue written by the Mexican UFOologist Jaime Musan, and a new introduction and preface written by Britt Elders. So that Jaime Maussan was the person that everyone went to. It's kind of like a 60 Minutes character in Mexico when the prophesized sixth sun was to appear above Mexico City, and directly above the center of Mexico City, UFOs appeared. They were following planes. It was like a week long of hello, here they are, blanked out everywhere else around the world. They couldn't stop it, but that's an incredible story. We may have time to get into that today, but we're going to focus on the amazing story. So, this photojournal presents a unique contact case of a Swiss farmer, Billy Meier, who claims to have met with the Pleiadians hundreds of times, compiling many layers of evidence, including notes on their conversation, hundreds of photographs, movie footage, audio recordings of the craft, landing tracks of spaceships, dozens of witnesses, and even metal samples of the craft itself. The quality and amount of evidence was convincing, making this the unlike any other case in the world. Uh, this takes us back to the time before home computers, digital photography, and easy accessible photo enhancement programs. Yet the evidence analyzed in laboratories around the world could not be easily dismissed and supported the claims of the contactee Billy Meier. The breathtaking images, profound words of the Pleiadians, and the extensive investigation that spans 7 years are as relevant today as they were 45 years ago. Ladies and gentlemen, Britt Elders, one of the most profound investigators of this case, is going to take us behind the scenes of the contact and all this stuff. So I'm just going to let you start on that. Were you invited by Wendell Stevens? How'd you get going? And just take us on a ride. I may share some pictures and some photos, and if you want
Sure.
to mention what they are in passing, it's okay. But you,
Okay. Well, it all began in the 70s when the technology was still basically analog. We had a company at that time called Intercept, and Intercept was designed to be an electronic countermeasure firm. So what we did was we prevented Fortune 500s, banks, financial institutions around the world from being eavesdropped on and wiretapped. And that was the company Lee, Tom, and I had. Wendell called us one day and he says, "You've got to come to Tucson." We were living in Phoenix at the time. And we said, "What's up?" He says, "No, you just have to get here." Well, Wendell was not the type that got overly excited about many things. So we thought, okay, something's up. We went down, we got to his house, And there he was standing over his kitchen table with Lou Zinstad from Switzerland, photographs all over the table. And we looked down and went, oh, UFOs, okay. Looked at the photographs. They were too good to be true. They were so crystal clear and perfect and like they'd been posed. So Wendell says in the end, he kept telling us about this. And Lou Zinstad came in and told us about Billy. He was a night watchman. He had, you know, little or no education, basically a fifth grade education, had traveled the world, so was knowledgeable from a worldly perspective. But he wasn't the type that was really out seeking publicity and things like that. Wendell at that point asked us to take our company Intercept, which was an investigative body, and put it behind this investigation into the Meier case. Lee and I both said no automatically. We worked too long, too hard for our reputation to go around telling bankers, guess what, guys, we're investigating UFO cases now. We knew that wouldn't go over well. So we said no. Wendell got impatient. He kept asking. So he went to Switzerland himself. And when he got back, he came right up to our house, sat down, more photographs, and said, you got to do this because it's going to blow your mind. And we thought, well, we've got a client in London, so we'll go ahead and just finish up that work and then pop over to Switzerland and probably spend a day and debunk everything that Meier says he has.
Right.
We were there 5 days going through everything. Billy paraded out photograph after photograph, album after album, all of them full of photographs, movie footage, sound recordings of the craft, which are very, very unique. And then the last day, he brings out this tattered old pink shoebox and he sets it on the dining room table. And he says, and this I'm supposed to give you. And he reaches in and he pulls out a 35 millimeter. Remember those old film canisters?
Yeah. A little
35
brownie.
millimeter film canister, pops it open, and pours onto a piece of paper some little fragments of metal. And he says, take these to the US, have them analyzed, and let me know what the scientists say.
Mhm.
He folded it all up, gave it to us. We went home from that trip with movie footage, audio recordings, photographs, witnesses. We interviewed well over 2 dozen witnesses the first time in, and metal. And then we got home and went, okay, now what do we do with it? Because who do you go to have this stuff analyzed? Fortunately, we ran into a young man by the name of Jim Delatosa.
Yeah.
He is, I call him my Atlantean scientist. The man is so brilliant. He can carry on a conversation with any scientific mind about anything. He's remarkable.
I'm going to tell a little story about Jim. So he
Okay.
came to Fred's house, and
Uh-huh.
we're hanging out, and he goes out and he's talking. He does things. He was the one that like did let the banks do the readers, and very super. And he comes out. He comes into the car. This is I think there was a Clint Eastwood movie out. I forget when this was. This might even have been in the 80s or 80, yeah, somewhere around in there. So he comes in with a football helmet, and there was a we still hear about it today. They have these little thing helmets that go over for the jet fighters, and they have a little thing over their eye, and they access that. So he was involved in the development of that. And I go, "What's this?" And it's like a football helmet with wires. He said, "Oh, this is the new telemetric device where they're going to think it. They're not even going to have to look at the eye camera. So this is more for the advanced secret space program, which was moving in leaps and bounds at that time. And so
Uh-huh.
we were down and playing music. Fred had gotten the Billy Meier sounds from, I think Wendell sent us copies.
Mhm.
Fred worked with a guy named David Tickle, and he managed to integrate them. And he would create the music, his music on synthesizers with that. And
Mhm.
so we played till wee hours of the morning with Jim and Fred, and we're talking, and Fred goes, "Well, I can arrange a contact for you." And yeah, so Fred, he gets in telepathic communication with Semyasi and says, "Yeah, shit, they're gonna go out for you here." And the next day, I was up there in the morning because it was fun hanging out, and we're sitting there, and Jim starts chain smoking. So it just he's like, and Fred's sitting there. Okay, Jim, are you gonna go? Are you gonna belay the experience? Go to this location at this time and have your spaceship. He had done this for a doctor previously in Colombia, who was going down to Colombia. And so he says, when you're down there, you're going to see a spaceship. And he was down in some valley, and a spaceship landed on a hill. A door opened, and a being came out and stood there and waved and took off. So Fred had arranged some of what I call program contacts, kind of like Billy
Uh-huh.
Meier, James Gillen, and of course Billy Meier would be the king of all time. But so he was such a genius, and he did the photo analysis, right?
He began it, yes.
Yeah. So go ahead. I'm sorry, I just want to share that experience.
He's quite remarkable, but we had met him through another source, and he took a look at the photographs and he says, the very first thing we have to do is digitize them. And we said, okay, great. Where do we go from there? And who do we find to do that? And he found the person, Dr. Michael Malin at U of A, who is very involved in space programs and all of this. He took him to Michael. He had the inner negatives we had digitized. And it was sort of like, okay, now we have everything in pixels where we can count the pixel across the flange of the ship. We can compare it to a tree. We can triangulate size. We could do all of that at that point in time. This particular photograph, by the way, we call the chimney scene
Yeah, I want to
because
go ahead.
the chimney scene was part of a series that was taken at Obersod. Like it's a remarkable series of photographs. That one we call the sunlight scene, and this is don't take it away yet. That's my favorite photograph because you can see the branch of the tree actually crosses over the flange of the ship. That was very, very important when we're looking at it from a scientific perspective because we could actually measure the distance from where Billy's camera was to that tree and then take the perspective of the branch crossing the flange to know how big that ship was. It was 21 feet in diameter. That's a variation 4. So Jim got the ball rolling and he found all kinds of people that were interested in looking at things, interested in analyzing things, but really did not want to put their name on it in the beginning. Eventually, we ended up at several different labs. We were at Scripps, we were at JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, where Robert Post, who is the head of the photo optics department at JPL, took a look at these and said, I don't know how he would do this. We can't duplicate it, but I can't tell you what it is. I don't know. That was the standard we got back on most of the photographs
Yeah,
from all of the scientists we worked with. We don't know what it is, but we can't duplicate it. We don't know how to do that either.
that's probably as far as their security clearance would allow them to go. JPL
Yeah.
clearly would have known. You know, this whole book, this whole scenario and the evidence is deep within this book. But ladies and gentlemen, for those of you, we're in a different climate now, and many of you are probably aware that we do have extraterrestrials, that the government's lying. In fact, another little personal story. I had a roommate in 1981 who I showed him the book, the first book that I have. Um,
Mhm.
and he said, "Oh, my father is doing, has a lab." And he was doing that. And guess what happened? I said, I don't know what. He said, well, he had these films they just got done. They were in the laboratory and they broke in and stole all the films. Well, yeah, so this takes me back to Billy Meier's stuff from he was a contactee at 5 years old. He was meeting Pleiadians for the special mission, and he doesn't have any education, and he's very plain, straightforward. And they told him, you don't become the main person here. We don't want anyone to worship you or to get into this. You let other people share the information, and you can
Mhm.
make money by your own hands, but not by the information. Which reminds me, I'm gonna share with you the Billy Meier contact notes. Folks, this is going to be um, um, right here. And I want you to, this link is going to be up here on my website. So I want you to check this out right here. This is a script thing. Billy Meier, all translated contact notes. And this stuff is deep. So you can go into here and you come down here, and these are the contact reports. And there he is. He's a one-armed farmer, so it'd be even harder for him to do this. So I gotta wait for the ad here. Sorry. Or yeah. So someone's making money here, but this is another one here. Uh, Billy Meier contact. You can see the text message from the Pleiades notes. You come down here, you have the um, another one called for some reason that's popping up. So I want to get down here. Let me close this out, see if I can do that. Okay, so am I opened up here? Oh my God. Look, no, more advertisements. So let me come down here. I can't seem to pull this up.
We'll
So
put the link up for them so that they can access it
yeah,
and read.
that'll be on my the link is going to be up um on my information here, but so I just wanted to share with you. We'll see if it can pull up here before the ad pops up. But um coming in here, okay, they blocked it. So anyway, it's amazing information, over 2,000 pages. And along the side there, you're also going to see UFO contact from Corendor. And back to Wendell Stevens just for a moment. He was an amazing guy. He told me some great stories. I took him to Egypt with Howard Mencher of the Billy Meier case and another guy, and I sat between him. We're called the 1111, and we were in Egypt on the 11th of January, 2000 or 199. So I sat between uh, the Mengers, Howard Menger, who built a UFO for the government in 1950, and Wendell Stevens, and just had a time and really picked his brain. And he shared with me, he was an early warning guy that would be scrambled whenever UFOs came. So he said he was sitting there in a thing with a one of the government's leading uh, weather experts talking about UFOs being nonsense, and they were snickering. And he comes up, "What's going on?" I go, "We've chasing them. We've seen them. They're real." And this guy, unfortunately, was at a meeting with, I think it was Lyndon Johnson at the time, and he sat up and said, "There's UFOs. I've been speaking to early warning radar in a big room full of aeronautic guys or weather people." And he said this and really loudly. And then like a week later, he was in a hospital. He shot himself like this. He was in a coma. And then miraculously, he got out of the coma, went into the desert and shot himself this way. So it's just one of the dirty deeds and things that happened. So Billy Meier's information and Wendell Stevens' research was impeccable. He was assaulted. Um, by the government. They put a girl that looked older, and
Now, there was a whole story there.
yeah,
I was very much a part of that, and that isn't what happened. The what actually happened with Wendell, who we love dearly, he was part of our family. Um, there were girls in the neighborhood that used to come swim in his pool. He had a big round circular pool in his house in Tucson.
yeah,
One of the mothers decided that since Wendell was traveling all over the world, he must have a lot of money. And she pressed statutory rape charges against Wendell. We got him an attorney because he wasn't going to get one. And we started researching her claims. He was with us in Europe when she said this all occurred. So those claims got thrown out. Then she waited about a month and she brought another set of claims and made certain he was in town. It really wasn't. I mean, Wendell was involved with many things besides the Meier case, and he was stepping on some toes in the government.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Um, Lee and I knew better. We wanted to work with government facilities, not work against them.
Right.
We had a lot of contacts in that field, of many, many fields of government. And so instead of doing battle with them and name calling, we would walk in and say, we've got this that is evidence of a potential UFO case. You take a look at it. We'll be there with you while it's analyzed, and you give us all of the information. You can do with whatever you want to with the information too.
Right.
It worked. We didn't have a problem. We never had anyone blow up our printing presses. We never had anybody attack us. We never had, I mean, the biggest pushback we got was from the UFO community. It was not
Yeah.
from the government. In
Sadly.
fact, they were really surprised that the UFO community wasn't behind this because it did have so much evidence that just, when you pile it all on in a very short period of time, hundreds of photographs, movie footage, metals, sounds, all these witnesses, how do you duplicate that? At that time when we didn't have the technology we have today. So we had no problems with it. But Wendell had a case specifically out of Charleston that was close to a military base, and he was going after the military. And so they didn't hesitate to stand back and say, have fun when this lady came in with those charges.
Right. So what I'll say is that he's on the right side of history. The government's been deeply involved in levels that when
Oh, yeah.
I'm the guy that revealed it, I kind of take the Wendell. But Wendell told me, he said, Rob, he said, that was actually an amazing time for me in jail. He said
It was.
he had so much information that he couldn't organize it. But he was sitting in jail and he'd tell his attorney, bring this. He told him right where the information was, and he would bring it. And what do you write? 3 books?
3 books. Lee and I used to drag stuff down to him all the time. Yeah.
He wrote 3 books in prison. He said it was the
Yeah.
most productive time of his life.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah, but Wendell was that kind of guy. He could do something like that standing on his head
yeah,
because he was such a mental person.
yeah,
Something was always happening up there, and he was always plotting, scheming, okay, well, if that happened, then how do I find out about this? That type of thing. And it was, yeah, he was a kick. He was really a kick. It did not do him any harm, um, which most people that are in prison cannot say. But because Wendell compartmentalized everything in his mind, in his heart, and worked through it that way, he was fine. And he pled no contest to the charges because the girls had been swimming in his pool. So he just said, no, I can do this. And it wasn't a problem. It ended up being a benefit for him.
yeah. I mean, it's amazing how that worked. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, he was completely innocent, so there's no emotional attachment there. And
Yeah.
stigma you get with the UFOs even back then was pretty heavy. The
Absolutely.
way we
Yeah.
come in contact was he was sending us mimeograph notes, and Fred would call me
Mhm.
on the phone, when you didn't have you just had to remember the number. And
Right.
I get up there and he goes, I got more notes. I get up there and I pull out this big stack of notes that I shared with you earlier on Billy
Mm.
Meier's history and the amazing things that took place. And they were made on mimeograph, and I would smell them because they smelled so good.
That
So,
ink on paper, wet
so
paper. Yeah.
yeah, so Fred and I were having experiences too, and they're a little different. And I'm talking about those in my book, and I've talked about in the past. What I'd like to get
Uh-huh.
to now, I understand, I think the audience understands the level of cover up and the lengths that they'll go. The government has been so deeply involved in using this technology to benefit the elites or the parasites or the human hybrids, which the Venusians call the intruders, the families of
Mm.
wealth that control money that legally were working with the fallen demons, the cherubim, the seraphim, Elohim, and Ophanhim, who sided in the Luciferian rebellion in 2012 when that covenant expired. So let's
Mhm.
get into the amazing. I'd like you to share, um, despite the investigation, and I have deep respect for Intercept and what you all did. And these photos in there, folks are sitting there. They got measurements, and they're going. He's pointing like this, and Billy Meier's standing there, and they're measuring the distances and taking photographs and other things to compare what was going on there. And eventually, obviously, they became true believers and wanted to do the best they could to bring this with the evidence. And this book is incredible. Most people don't even know it. The other ones are literally out of uh, out of reach to the average person. I'm going to share with you
Yeah.
here um, um, an image um, that that I have, and I had contacted Britt about this, and you must have like number 4 or 5 of this image.
Well, which one?
This is a book. I don't know if I can rotate it.
No, I no.
Didn't you get what you
No,
got?
we gave Wendell the second book. We had 3 and 4. Tom had 5. Yeah, Billy had number 1.
Yeah, this is the first book. Billy had
Yeah,
number 1. Wendell had 2, and
we
about
gave him 2.
yeah, I was close with him. And before I knew he was kind of fading there, I gave him a call. I said, uh, I had lost my original, or someone had taken
Mm.
it, as is common, right? People
Yeah.
stealing Billy Meier's 800 photographs. How many does he actually have left? I mean, the thievery and the plagiarism and you know, it's just horrible what's taken place, human nature there. But
Mhm.
so, and he sent, I didn't realize it. He goes, yeah, I got a book for you, Rob. And he sent me his. I said, wow, this is kind of,
That's fabulous.
yeah, I mean, it's an amazing piece of history. I'll never sell it. And it's quite amazing. So I'd like you to
Yeah.
now share, and we can go into time travel, the distance. They would come here on a 11-year cycle, from what Fred was telling me, and for a couple years, the portals would open up and they could get here in 7 hours. And then they have a ship that we'll get into later, maybe, where they could time travel from the Pleiades in 7 minutes. So
Mm.
share with me some of what you found the most interesting esoteric information about the culture, the life, and some of the things, the signposts along the way where you just were not so much in the investigative of whether it's true or not. I'm just going to assume, tell everyone with my stamp of approval and this book, which you should get on Amazon. Um, and here it is again. It's UFO Contact from the Pleiades, Volume 1 and 2. In fact, right now, go to Amazon and purchase that puppy. And if you make it down to Conscious Life Expo, you can get a signature of Britt and maybe even Tom. It will. I don't know if he'll be coming. So please share with us. I'm just going to shut up, and if I have a question burning, but I wanted you to share the amazing things that you were looking at in his relationships and the women going aboard the craft, Semyasi, Ptah, all these other ETs that are mentioned in the book, but are revealed more deeply in the notes. So tell us about the things that you learned
Yeah.
going, whoa.
Well, I think the very first thing, uh, the first meeting that he had with Samyasa, which there was a 10-year period of time where the Pleiadians actually studied Meier so that they could be certain that he would be capable of handling contact and the repercussions that would come from them. When he first met Samyasa, they met under a tree. They talked for quite a while. And she told him that one of the reasons that they chose her was because she was female. And men don't react quite as aggressively towards women, which made absolute sense. It was just one of those logical, ding, that one makes sense. But on the spiritual side, I think the biggest thing that Lee and I especially took away from all of this is that creation exists in everything. That's how the Pleiadians look at it. But you have to balance a material world and a spiritual world. And we don't do that. And that's one of the things that they hope people of Earth can begin to change. And when I say spiritual, I don't mean religious. I mean that spiritual connection with divine energy, with creation, which is in all things. And understanding that the material can't surpass that. And until we get to that point where we have a harmony of the spiritual and the material world, as they've managed to achieve, we're not going to be capable of going off into space and meeting with other cultures. Their biggest message to mankind was for us to realize we are not the only thinking beings in the universe. I have to say, Billy's contacts that began in 1975 were probably 40 years too soon. The world was not ready to hear that. Today we are. We understand we're not the only thinking beings in the universe. So it becomes something that's really important to look at it as it was back in the 70s versus what it is today. Today, I think we have the potential to reach that harmony of spiritual and physical. I think we have the harmony available to us if we do the work inside, which is what they say we have to do. They have some beautiful quotes that talk about how a spiritually developing person isn't lucky because he creates his own luck. Luck doesn't just come to you in a happenstance manner. It's there. It's in you. You have to bring it up. You have to understand your being from the inside, the core out, in order to find your own harmony and your own balance. They talk about things like when someone is against you or says you're wrong or says things that are wrong about you, not to get angry about it, just to understand that they are progressing at their own rate and they haven't progressed very far. Be accepting of them. Try to let them see you as the best person that you can possibly be, and that may help their growth. They talk about spiral universes. They talk about incarnation patterns and how we have to go through these so that we have the growth of wisdom that we take through each life. They do talk about how time and space do not exist. That's fun because that's their basis behind transportation, is that there is null time and null space. And we had two great aerospace scientists, basically, explain this to us, H. David Froning and Alan Holt of NASA. David worked at McDonnell Douglas for years and then went independent. And he actually had a diagram that explained it perfectly, that you would have a 3.5 hour trip from the Pleiades out to the edge of their atmosphere and a 3.5 hour trip from the edge of our atmosphere to Earth. The rest of that space and time did not exist. And that's where they got the 7 hours of time travel. Alan Holt explained it as something that we were looking at through space planes as a possibility, but we were projecting at that point in time 60, 70 years before we'd have the capability of doing it. The one thing that didn't key into that was the fact, again, what Samyasa said, you have to have the balance of spiritual and material. If you don't, you won't be able to make that jump where null time, null space exist. So that was really important. The
Well, I want to say one thing. if
Yeah.
it wasn't, I know it was premature considering how it's accepted, but everyone started talking about the Pleiades. This was around the time, this is a little before the government and the Greys' naughty business started coming up because they're not all uh, friendly and nice out there.
Not everyone's benevolent. Yes.
So, if it wasn't for Billy Meier, and to a lesser extent Fred Bell, we have the technology that he was given, and sharing this information out there, we wouldn't know about the Pleiades. And everyone is talking about the Pleiades now. They've been very influential in our past. Um, Alan
Yes.
Holt, Fred worked with on NASA. Um,
Hmm.
Fred was working for NASA for the Apollo 1, and he got fired because he said, "You guys are going to have a fire." And he got 2 years back pay. As soon as he was fired, he got a job at JPL and McDonnell Douglas building
Yeah.
rocket ship because he had security clearance and he was a top-notch electrician. And then 2 years later, in '65, when they died, when he was 22, he got a big check. And then Werner von Braun called him personally. He said, "Mr. Bell, I'm sorry we did not listen to you. The men died at the Cape. We want you to be in charge of all quality control for all of NASA." And he said, "No
Mm.
way." So Fred turned down Never a Straight Answer, or Not a Space Agency, as he often called them, for their lies and cover up. And I was there in his house. He had his young daughter, and the phone rang, and we're sitting in there playing with his daughter, and she was still in diapers, and he goes, "Oh, hold on, Alan." And he put it on hold, said, "I want you to hear this." And he put it on speaker. And Alan Holt said, "Hey, Fred, listen, we're doing something down in Los Angeles, and you're the expert on lasers." He had helped in the Soyuz and American docking, two spaceships. He consulted on that. So I said, Reagan, we're doing something, lasers in outer space, Star Wars. I'd really love for you to be there." And Fred goes,
Uh,
he goes, "No, Alan, I got my kids, and I'm not going to work with those guys on anything destructive. But thanks for the call. This is the guy who built the lunar liftoff module. Can you tell me about the why we're right there with the moon and stuff? Tell me, what is your opinion? A lot of people say they didn't. I know they did land on the moon, but tell me what you think. Or
they
um,
landed.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
Excuse me.
yeah. I think that what they did was they were going elsewhere. So I know it's winter time. Britt and I are both having little coughing fits. But what they did, ladies and gentlemen, is they landed. Stanley Kubrick did create a film of them doing things because they were going to an ancient site that was nearby that had a big crash spaceship, and they were going over and getting there and doing that while they were up there. And I remember they went the backside of the moon. They said, "Look at the size of that thing." There was a huge radio tower and a mining operation on the backside. So, so let's go back to the spiritual information, the time travel. When your coughing fit stops, just raise your hand and come on. So Fred told me that they had told him the way they do their ships is they have a top and bottom lens. So what the ship does is it takes a picture of the area and space where they are in the universe, and then it takes a picture that has in its records of where they want to go. And all of the pathways are mapped out. There's another contactee who, working with Andromedans and the people from Aldebaran, and
Yeah.
they had these crystals in there, and they put it together like a Lego set, and that's where they would program their jump because they actually have mapped it out with everything moving and all the influences of the planet. It's an amazing technology, and they jump through
Yeah.
various portals.
Yeah.
And he actually has pictures on board the craft. So, so
Well, let me add something in here that I think is
please.
important. The reason I say yes, we landed on the moon is Lee and I were good friends with Edgar Mitchell. He was incredible. He was an astronaut. But I grew up with this stuff. My dad worked with von Braun. And I have a picture of Dave Simons and my dad and von Braun standing in their shorts in the trailer there at White Sands as they were doing research and work on the early missile systems. My dad also worked at JPL. So as a kid, I was at White Sands, Los Alamos, the Cape, wherever dad needed to be, we went. And yeah, so yes, I know what the guys, the engineers would talk about when they would come sit around our living room and discuss that object that was there hovering as their rocket was going straight up and straight down, or their rocket was going straight up and making a right angle turn and flying off. So I grew up with that stuff. The fact that UFOs existed was curious. It was a question, but it was something I knew was real because I knew all the guys that had seen it early on. And yeah, there is a cover up. Our government is, quite frankly, way behind times when it comes to other governments and the work they're doing, the work they're releasing to the public. We need to be more open. We need transparency. We need a place where everything can come together so people can learn. Because right now, there's so many different things, and there are so many experiences out there, and so many, like Fred and all these other people, Raymond Moody, everybody that's had these experiences, and they've got a little piece of history. We need a place where all of this history can come together. That includes Billy Meier. That includes all of MUFON's work, all of CUFOS, all of APRO. They all have such great information, but we need to be able to access that all the way around the entire population of the planet. Because until we can get into the things that can start changing our heart vibration, for lack of a better term, and opening it up more, we're not going to be able to move forward with our civilization, with our culture. And we have a lot of work to do. You're muted.
One of one of
Here
the
you
things.
are.
Oh, here we go. One of the things that happened in the 50s was George Adamski's first contact, which was from Venusians in modern day. They've never stopped coming here. They're throughout
Right.
history, on the walls, in the Mahabharata.
That's
All the
right.
records are just filled with the Vimana and all these type of things. So it's always been kept hidden from us because if anyone, as my Venusian commander that I did the interview with, that I'll be sending this information to you, she says, you know what? When the bellicose militarists, when the religious hucksters and the greedy financiers go away, they're threatened by our free energy systems and life extension, and they want to keep us ignorant and in suffering. So the
Yeah.
Venusians were our primary guardians. The Queen of Venus, who I speak with and get recorded messages from,
Uh,
she's head of not only of the Venus, but she's head of the what's called the solar councils, and then she's also head of the Galactic Confederation of Light. And
mhm.
their information is, that spiritual thing, and that's what they're saying is they can't interfere. We have to make the changes on our own. So I'd like to
Right.
ask you, um, if we could go back to the Billy Meier and
Sure.
that were amazing for you. um, what spiritual, I mean, they said, uh creation is in everything. I would say the creator, the living word of that,
Right.
all that is imminent in everything. People go, where's God? And I say, where is God not?
Exactly.
So we as individuals are blinded to this reality of the nature of our past lives and soul. And the battle of Bhagavad Gita, as told by Yogananda, is really the battle that we have to go through Tell us from
Mhm.
your understanding of the Pleiadian information, which is really where I wanted to go here. Tell us about the spiritual information that that would help us get to that position.
Uh, um, a lot of it has to do with how you treat yourself and how you treat each other, because we are literally so polarized in so many areas. But until we can listen, not with just our ears in our head and do the rational left brain thing, until we start listening to each other with our heart and really realizing we are all connected on some level, whether it's a past life level, whether it's a current present day level, which the Pleiadians say exists simultaneously. Um, we have to have that openness to each other. And when we hit that space, then we can really begin to be productive as individuals. But it's through meditation, it's through understanding that we're not alone, understanding that we are all related, that we bring ourselves to a point where our heart can actually open to that kind of energy. We're getting there, but we're doing it too slowly.
Well, I think it's a message of Christ, do unto others as you would have done.
Exactly.
Recognize that there's a universal Father of lights, as he would say, and that we're all children and we're all related. We can have free will, we can disagree, but we should always have that respect and the understanding. I mean, Billy Meier, um, he must be an incredibly humble man.
He is really great. We had a conversation not too long ago that um, I said, Billy, because first of all, everybody needs to realize Billy has had numerous attempts on his life. Wendell was there during one of them. We were present during one of them. And we were just talking kind of randomly a few weeks ago. And I said, what do you do when someone really needles you, really tries to get under your skin, or when someone tries to take your life? And he says, it's very simple. I send them love. That's
Well,
all it takes.
there you go.
I mean, that's the centeredness of this individual. Still, he's 87 years old. He has gone through hell, literally.
I think he's had 24 attempts on his life or something like that, maybe more now.
Oh, many more than that. Many more than that. One not too far off in the distance. Yeah. Um, Several while we were doing the investigation, but one just a few months ago. So, um,
He had like a metal,
die.
he had a metal notebook in his pocket. He's coming back from a contact in the rain or something, and somebody just came up to him and shot him point blank, but it was only at 22.
Yeah.
I mean,
He had been told, Simyasa had told him
someone's down
to
there.
build that little metal shield and to wear it. And he did. And it saved his life. But they do little things like when he was sitting there with Wendell, they were sitting outside on the sofa talking. And from up on the hill,
He bent over
someone
in time or something.
took a shot. And just as the shot went off, Billy had a pain and leaned over. Bullet would have hit him, but it just barely missed him. So it's that kind of, and like he said, they manipulated that pain so he would move. Um, they have been there for him. He is he is well protected at the farm. They understood when we got in with our background in security and all of that. Yeah, it's a good idea to have somebody out there patrolling the grounds with a weapon. It's a big place. Right above them on the hill is the Swiss military. On the other side is a bunch of people that have seen the ships. They don't want to talk about it. It scares them like you can't believe.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean he's nestled in this little area where he's surrounded by strangeness. And so many people in Europe, primarily in Switzerland, is at least what I've run into. They have this dogmatic sense where At one point, we were in a little town called Dusnang, and we were there for 3 days. Every morning, the church was right across from us. They would march the entire family to the graveyard and scream and cry, and it was outrageous. Instead of realizing that these people had moved on to another existence, another experience, and celebrating that, they did just the opposite. And the poor kids, I felt so sorry for them. They had to go to school with all that heaviness and weight. It was really something to experience. But I think that that type of attitude is what has had a lot of people trying to assassinate Meier.
Do you think of the percentage? And I know they're pretty dogmatic in Switzerland, and but what do you think percentage-wise is of the silence group within the governments?
Hmm.
Guessing. I mean, I know there's the fanatics out there, but
Um, I don't think at this point in time that's what's happening. They wouldn't miss. Quite frankly, they just would not miss, especially our government. Um, I'd say it's a pretty small percentage. It's more individualized right now. And even the Pleiadians have indicated that it's more about individuals that disagree with him, that haven't learned how to open up their heart yet, that they're the ones that are taking the pot shots at Meier. I think oh, you're muted again.
I just said, well, that's interesting.
I think in the beginning he had issues with the government because they wanted to know what was going on. They wanted to know, what are these photographs and this movie footage all about? I think they were responsible for stealing a lot of the negatives in the early days. But then I think it got to a point where, God, they're just happening constantly. He takes off in the middle of the night for a contact, comes back 10 hours later. He might be in a pouring rainstorm, but he steps out of the forest and he's totally dry.
Yeah.
All of this type of thing. And then so many individuals from all over Europe actually witnessed Meier go off to a contact, come back from a contact. They would see flashes of light. Lee and I experienced it. Billy went to a contact middle of the night. He took off. It was pouring rain and he was trudging through the mud. So Lee and I went outside and we stood, and the skies cleared up. The rain stopped, but we were wondering when Billy would be back. And as we thought that, there were three huge flashes of light that lit up everything through the trees, under the trees, above. I mean, and it had no source, it was just there. The next morning, we got up and we followed Meier's tracks, and they led to this clearing in the middle of the forest, and then they vanished. Well, Billy came back the following morning and he was walking down from a completely different direction. And he was not wet. He was just fine.
But
And he said, I
they
had a great
teleport,
contact.
he goes somewhere to take it up, but they teleport him back down somewhere.
Yeah.
Probably
And
sometimes.
not in the same place usually. He
Sometimes
carries,
close to his house too, I'd imagine.
yeah, but quite often quite a ways away. He keeps a walkie-talkie with him that has some good distance on it. And he calls to be picked up wherever they drop him off. And
Right.
sometimes
Cool.
he's had to use a phone, a pay phone, to call the house and tell them, look, I'm over by this little town, come and get me. How would you get 10
Huh.
miles away in a period of an hour and a half
Wow.
walking? Yeah.
Interesting. I know one time they came down, I think the ship came into like his yard, and the EMP of the ship took out his car battery or something. Got one arm and goes, "You guys get
Yeah.
down here and fix it, right?"
Yeah.
He had like two Pleiadians out there trying to figure out how to start his car. Is that right?
A lot of experiences have gone on there. Yeah. But when you talk about things like that and how physical things are affected, one of the things that we did run into in the investigation, which I think is important to mention, because it may somehow come back to some of the things you're involved with, is when the Pleiadians brought in the first beam ship that Billy saw and his first meeting with Semyasa. In 1982, we did a documentary film.
Is that the
And
variation one?
we brought in Wild Herberg, which is a company that deals with radiation. We went to the first contact site. That whole area was still hot. Gamma radiation, Meier's belt buckle, the moped, anything that he touched during that first, I'd say probably 10 contacts, still hot with gamma radiation. And then later they came out and said, we didn't know it affected living life on Earth so much. So
Wow.
they changed up variation one and went to variation two.
Hmm. Um, Pretty much the same. It looked like it had a little, maybe a antenna nullifier there.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious. When did you guys get involved? Was this in 74, 75?
The contacts began January 28th, 1975. We got involved in 1976.
Hmm. Yeah, Fred's he Christmas Day 1975 is when they had given him actually this design. Um,
Uh,
he had a picture of it. He goes, I was on the ship. I laid down. She was stroking my head. He was all excited, and he eventually didn't want to go up anymore. It was really hard to come back down. We did go to the Pleiades once, and he
Billy said that too. It is difficult to come back to Earth once you've been with them. Yeah.
yeah he got to go and pilot the craft. They went. He said they just took some circles around Era at a leisurely,
Uh,
just kind of left it for a couple hours, just going all around the planet and seeing what it was like. And he said they're really interested in agriculture and
hmm
spending time with that. And
Well,
um,
that's because the Pleiadians are all self-sufficient. They all have their own plot of land. They grow their own food. They raise animals such as rabbits, very similar to rabbits. That's one of their protein sources. But they take care of themselves.
mhm.
So no matter what your position or station is in life, you have the ability to care for yourself, which is, we've kind of learned, taught ourselves not to do that.
Right, to
Yeah.
let other things, and they have amazing technology, but I'm sure they're pretty much like the Venusians. Everyone learns, goes through all the courses of everything. So
Yeah.
anyone goes down, someone can replace, and they don't have specialists. They have everyone really good at everything, and there's a couple that accelerate in
Yeah.
certain areas there too. So that's
Well,
pretty
they also say that certain individuals gravitate towards certain things. So they want those natural skills to surface and to be utilized to the best of that person's ability. And that's how, everybody could probably be a cosmonaut or an astronaut, but Semyasa had that pull, that natural pull towards it. And that's why she was. If somebody has a natural pull towards some other form of science or development, or as in the case with the Pleiades, where they had to engineer their own atmosphere, that type of thing, they would allow that person to just go blossom and be the best they could possibly be, which I think is really great.
Mhm. Did they I heard something about Billy that Semyasi was coming looking for a soulmate on Earth or something. Is that true? I just
No,
yeah, no.
Semyasa, her soulmate was from the Pleiades as well, but they had long conversations about what soulmates were, twin souls, twin flames, all of that.
Share that with
Because, yeah, well, they got into the fact of these incarnations and how important those are because we bring pieces of that with us. So if you have a twin flame, it's someone that has that same energy as you do that you probably had a life with someplace else, not necessarily on Earth, And you're recognizing that and you're connecting to that. And it is a complete soul connection.
Mhm.
A soulmate is someone that literally balances your side. So, whatever that is, it's just unified there. But it doesn't mean you only have one. There are many different soulmates, there's many twin flames, twin souls, and it just all has to do with understanding that we don't just live this life. We have multiple lives in multiple dimensions, vibrations, patterns,
Mhm.
and all of those contribute to that concept of twin flame, twin soul, and soulmate.
Okay, so I heard one thing, and I'd like your opinion, basing this on the Pleiades, um, that there's a soul that's kind of masculine and feminine, and at some point
Mm-hmm.
it splits and goes through both male and female lifetimes, and then at a certain level they go back up, and I wouldn't call it in a physical dimension. They kind of actually fuse and become one being, but on the way back they work together as
It's
one.
an ethereal androgynous being. Yeah.
Right. So okay, so that's kind of that's they did that did come
Yeah.
from. Yeah, Fred talked
Yeah.
about that. There were different things that there. So oh, let's talk about I saw the picture. I think Wendell showed it to me. Um there was a kind of a long-haired Pleiadian man, a silver spacesuit. He had a laser beam, and I think Billy got to shoot it through the tree or something, or the guy did.
A woman brought that thing to him. The tree. Yeah, we saw it. We filmed it.
Oh,
There
you were there?
was.
Was it a Pleiadian woman?
We did not see her. We saw the aftermath of where Billy
Oh,
shot the tree, and it literally burnt a hole right through the tree,
yeah.
a perfect hole. And
And
this was not a small tree. We're talking about a foot in diameter, and
uh-huh.
it went all the way through. It was really quite amazing. Yeah, it was two women that came in from another system. They were not Pleiadian, they were from the doll universe.
We just saw
And
part
they,
of the long hair and the arm.
yeah,
Yeah, I saw
yeah,
that.
that's all you could see.
Do you have that in
Yeah.
your scans?
Pardon? No, it's not in this.
Okay.
Billy asked us not to publish that.
Yeah, I guess Wendell shared that.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. So, wow, laser beams. Let's talk about. Um, I think they had spoken something about the evolution of souls and how sometimes they become a group soul, or
We have a tendency to incarnate into groups. And that's that recognition of spirit, which is how they found Billy in this life, because their group on the Pleiades recognized his vibrational pattern from that lifetime on the Pleiades, and that's how they found him now.
his soul signature.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fred said something like that. Let's go. I want to ask another question in regards to their where was I? Okay, it was in the when they came here, Fred was like
Hmm.
trying to get them to get more involved, and I think they are more now. But they were very much like, we don't want to get involved here.
Yeah.
They had known about the gray reptilian and implant agenda, and they didn't want to um, get involved. They had gotten involved here in the past, and the Pleiadians, and ladies and gentlemen, the Pleiades star clusters in the Taurus cloud, there's over 250 stars. So just a little seven sisters that we see where Era is
Right.
is near one of them is a very
I,
minor part. And they're coming from there's Pleiadians, there's Lyrians. There's a friend of mine gone on board and he showed me a picture, can't share it with anyone, but little whiskers coming out. She had really dark freckles and um, they're they're involved in some sort of mating with humans and stuff like this. I'm not really sure about that, but the Pleiadians, they did not want to get involved. Can you share what you know about that and how they
yeah.
shifted?
They still don't. But a lot of that has to do with the fact that they got so involved with us early on in mankind's history.
Yeah.
They
Have to.
they kind of felt responsible for some of the ways that we took off with religious beliefs and things like that, and how we didn't really learn, we instead worshiped. And that worshiping thing is a big deal with them. They don't want that.
Absolutely.
So when Billy asked a question, why don't you help us? Ptah came out and said, we are not allowed to interfere with you yet. Operative word yet. And the yet goes to because we do live in a polarized world and we are trying to open that heart chakra and get that energy happening. They said if you get to a point where you destroy the planet,
Yeah.
then they can interfere, but not to save mankind because technically they don't believe in death. They know you will move on to another existence,
Hmm.
but to save the planet. And the
Hmm.
reason for that is if we destroy our planet, we will send ripples throughout the universe. And that's not healthy for anyone.
I understand there's 62 planets in our solar system, many of them celestialized spheres in higher realms of existence. The Pleiadians, they were involved in some genetic altering, 18 million years ago on Venus,
Mm-hmm.
where they saw humans and bees along with the Aldebrans and the quote vril technology.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Um, that's a genetically altering, and it still seems to be going on. And I guess there's elements of that which is understood. We look at it like, oh my God, what are you doing? And then there's
Yeah.
those who are doing negative things with it. And then the Venusians say you can enhance it sideways, but you can't like it enhance vertically. That soul has to develop, or the consciousness has to develop into those higher aspects on its own. Um, and can you talk a little about that?
Um, gosh, no, I think you pretty well said it. You have to develop that through individual, not just through group, but that group tie is always going to be there.
Mhm.
And it's everybody comes together at some point. And so that to them is what we need to be working towards. That's one of the biggest messages they had for us
Mhm.
is we have got to find that unity and that understanding of each other. But we have to do it on an individual basis first. And they are concerned that we're not going to do that.
I don't know if you'd heard this. I want to ask you because Fred told me that the Pleiades, when they started understanding genetics and the development of the soul, that they realized that they had to, not through force, but willingly educate everyone about genetics, and those people who had genetic defects would not
Mm.
have bear children, so they could eradicate all genetic anomalies and create a stronger genetic phenotype, but it was done by free will.
Ah, no, I had not heard that.
Okay, Fred
That's
told me that.
interesting.
It did not come
Yeah.
through Fred. They also told him that abortion within the first 2 weeks, they
Mhm.
they generally can control and manipulate their own energies and know about menstrual cycles, so they don't have that. But he said that within
Mhm.
the first 2 weeks, he says, because the soul cannot actually indwell in in a in the zygote as it develops. But soon as the
Uh-huh.
brain nucleic acids are formed in 14 days, a soul could inhabit in the female.
Uh-huh.
So they I think they kind of said, well, karmically, if you had an abortion before 2 weeks, the soul could not inhabit. But of
You
course,
don't carry that karmic pattern. Yeah.
right, but they're very respectful of life. And do they have any
Mhm.
restrictions on parents making sure that the masters or the guiding teachers kind of uh, look over and because having a children, they have to be compatible so that they're pretty much evolved to that level anyway. But do they have any
Yeah.
restriction on child rearing?
Not too much. They they bring a child into the world as we do. They look at the child as helping it develop into whatever its core energy is about.
Mhm.
But there isn't one saying that this is the way they will be taught. They let them have the ability to experience what they need to experience,
Mm.
which I think is really important and something that we have a tendency to focus on such a compressed little boxed area of do this and do that and don't do this and don't do that. And they would rather have that person feel what it is to move forward in an energy that works for them and then experience it fully. And that's a big difference.
Yeah, free will, freedom to choose and to develop.
Absolutely. You have to have that.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what
How we learn.
the the Venusians say mankind must be free to develop on his own and to make his own
Yeah.
mistakes. And
Yeah, exactly.
but when you think of
And we have to be responsible for those mistakes.
hmm,
We have to learn to say, oh, I can learn from this and go forward rather than eh, we have a tendency to say, if we made a mistake, blame somebody else, hide from it. Don't do that.
uh,
Step out, admit it, learn from it, get better. That's all you have to do.
I think the materialistic society that we've created and the attention to consumerism and all the waste that we're producing and the destruction is
Yeah.
hidden from us, and we don't recognize how violently we have destroyed nature, and entire ecosystems, life, water, air, and all these things, so that when mankind wakes up to the abomination of his free will choices, misguided and misled by the Venusians,
Everything.
the intruders and interlopers, and
Yeah.
technologies that affect us negatively, that keep us, caught in those little boxes, as you said. Um, Share with me. I know we're getting it's an hour and a half. I'd like to go a little longer. You're so amazing. Can you share with me? Billy has gone out there. I'd love for you
Mhm.
to share some of your experiences. I mean, if you remember, I love the one where he goes to the Amazon planet or to the Pleiades. And that did he actually go to the doll universe? And how about when this is when in India, I think it's 63, before the Pleiades, he
Yeah.
time traveled back to Christ. And there's a guy with him who goes, I'm mad at Christ and I'm going to go beat him up. And Billy had to punch him. And Semyonsi let him take his friend from the ashram to go back in time to
Yeah.
Christ. I mean, one of these, maybe that one would be cool.
Well, God, that's a whole big thing because there is a woman whose family is quite prominent. She lives in New York right now. And she was there. She was present in India when he was having those experiences. And she was present when he was actually meeting with these different individuals from different locations in the universe and met them as well.
In India.
Uh, Phobos Paul, yeah. So she's quite remarkable. She is much older now and not in good health, but she has given several interviews lately and really just said everything that happened, which I think is wonderful.
Can
But
you send me
Billy's experiences, pardon?
you send me links to those or
When they release the video, I think they're waiting until she passes and graduates. But yeah, um, because she has a lot to say about Billy, and she has always been a big supporter of his.
well,
Yeah.
so the ones from other they were still humanoid looking like us and could pass as
Yeah,
Earth people?
very much so. The problem is, and maybe we should close on this because this is so funny in a weird way, but it talks about Earth humans. They can't spend a lot of time with us. They can't sit down and spend days and days and days talking to us for a very simple reason. They say we have auric stench.
Stench. Yeah.
I love that expression. Have you ever been in a room with somebody and you just go, whoa, and you want to move away from them? That's how they feel about us. They can handle our energetic vibrations for a few hours, and that they max out it. Then they get nauseous. So it's, I look at it this way, it's our responsibility as humans and part of the cosmos to drop that auric stench without perfume, with all the other stuff, but just get back to our core. And I think that would make a world of difference. And I think more and more people then could have contacts like Billy and Fred and all of these others that have. But even with Billy, they say we have to be careful because of the people around you
Yeah.
and the energy that they give off. So they can only take a few hours at a time. And that's one of the biggest things that I just, to me, that describes what we have to do to change. We got to lose that auric stench.
I have to tell a story here about auric stench. So Fred used to talk about this guy named James, the Pleiadian, and
Uh-huh.
he talked about him, and so he goes, Rob, you're going to make a pyramid system. We're sending it to James, and I go, okay. So who's this guy James? The story of James, he's a Pleiadian who was down here on loan working for the secret space program, which is kind of a
Hmm.
wide secret space program. All the countries involved have scientists on it, and I know Carl Sagan. He left. He didn't die. He went up and
Yeah.
on Johnny Carson. He goes, "You really think there's people out there?" And he just sat there smiling, like,
Yeah.
"I know more than you do." And
Right.
and so he went up in the secret space program. I don't know what level he was in or how good or bad, but I mean, keeping that kind of thing from the public is a lot of arrogance, and of course, their lives are threatened. But he was full blown into it. Anyway, so James was living in Canada at Margaret Habsburg's house. And
Hmm.
Fred had told me, he told him that there were tall nosed grays. There was like a fleet of different aliens living in this giant mansion. Yeah, Habsburg warburgs, big money, deep elite black
Yeah.
sun families, financing wars and all this stuff. And she was like a little old biddy in her 60s, and she was scared to death. She didn't wasn't even there. And he said James is in, they've got him in this giant, in this big castle room. And he said all the furniture is like from the 1600s. And what happens is the human body sends off effluvia in an ectoplasm that lodges, the proteins lodge into the wood.
To the
And so
wood. Yeah.
this attracts spirits that can manifest, and those places probably have some nasty histories in there. And
Yeah.
so what he would do, we got him a pyramid system, and put these different things in there, and he would go outside and sleep underneath a pyramid. So
Mhm.
Fred was supposed to go to Canada, and he um, he's supposed to go to Canada, and he was sick and he couldn't go. So I said, "Well, I'll go," and he goes, "Oh, great." So I get up there, and they don't let me in. I have all of his products and stuff, and I'm supposed to do a radio show. This lady's got a room. I'm supposed to stay for 3 days, and so I get there, and and they block all the products from coming in. I said, "Well, okay." So I get there. She picks me up. She knew I was coming. Fred said I'm too sick. I got on the plane, and I I I got there, and she takes me to a radio station. So
Uh-huh.
I'm on the radio station, and I'm, got a pyramid on my head. He says he's got a pyramid and he's doing this and that, and um, a unique thing, and you're going to be doing, like this. And I said, yeah, they create negative ions, and they're healing for the body. And all of a
Uh-huh.
sudden, he gets a phone call, and this guy goes, yeah, 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 that's a bunch of nonsense and this and that. And so I busted it down scientifically, what negative ions were, and I kind of put it
Right.
in place. And then it was just he thought, I was clone of Fred scientifically. I understand like quantum physics. I can't do the math, but I understand string theory and
Uh-huh.
how the electrons move. They don't move all the time. They dance, they stay in one place and all this stuff. So um, I laid it out, and then he guy gets a phone call, uh, and uh, and he says he says there's he says just a second, and he puts it on hold and goes, uh-huh, 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 okay. And he hangs up the phone, and he said, Rob, I've never had this before, but they told me I have to get you off the air. S- Ca-
Oh,
Canada, their police are you don't mess with them. They're full-blown Nazis. They will rough you up and beat you up and toss you around. Uh, the Royal Mounted Police are a deep police state. They're very, very intense.
wow.
So uh, I we go to the place, and we get there, and she looks at the place, and we go to the door. The entire block is blacked out.
Oh,
And so she called the people, yeah, we had electrical outage about 20 minutes ago. The entire block. They shut the entire block down because I was going to sneak in this room. And then there's this tall guy comes up. So I get to meet this Pleiadian. His name is James. And I'm going to
James.
describe him. He's about 6'3", 6'4". He kind of looked down. His skin was alabaster white. He was like a 15-year-old, no facial hair, completely albino white, kind of like in the hair, platinum,
Uh-huh.
and white little eyebrows, no hair on his face, no, I don't know, sideburns. His face seemed like a peach. And
Yeah.
so I go, what's your name? He said, James. And I'm kind of going, oh, wow. So this is how I my interactions with the Venusians too. They were showing up, Valiant Thor, and when every time I meet them, there's a telepathic hit. And
Uh-huh.
somehow I'm blocked, or I don't ever bust them on who they are at the time. And so, uh, and someone goes, well, why don't we all go to dinner? I go, okay. I said, James, can you come? He goes, yeah. I said, you sit next to me. I want to hang close with them. So I was kind of answering questions and stuff. And, it was a nice dinner. And
Yeah.
finally I go, hey, why don't you come up? Why don't you come up to my room? He goes, okay. So he comes up to the room, and I open the door. I say, go on in. And as soon as the door closed, and I go, so where are you from? And he smiled like this. He smiled at me, and he said, Rob. And he went over to the window, and he pulled aside the curtain, and he looked up towards the Pleiades, and he said, let's just say we're kindred spirits.
Aw.
So we talked for a little bit, little personal, private stuff there. And so I had my interaction with James. And I guess what happened was he eventually went back, and Fred had a poem, but he wrote a drive. He was afraid they were going to knock him off. So
Hmm.
he was very circumspect, and when he got to leave, but he was working. I think they're working with identifying good scientists in these programs. They know there's
Uh-huh.
that are not, that are there. They get into this business and they sign these contracts that say if I tell anything that I'm doing, I have a right to be killed. That's why all the
Right.
assassins. I got a
Right.
contract. The guy is breaking his contract by telling the truth about the lies, deceit, and the cover up, and the absolute abomination of the governments keeping this information for themselves and the elite families to actually encourage suffering while they. It's just crazy. We can't understand it, but I think they're doing that. The Venusians have taken away some of the toys that they had given them, and the Venusians
Oh.
uh, they have a time metron, time people, police,
Mhm.
and they monitor the monotonous flow of time. And Raymond, that's probably a position he's going to get there as an archivist and historian. But
Mhm.
I go, what do they see? Because he wasn't allowed to describe it, but they see an anomaly somewhere in 8 parallel universes
Yeah.
and timelines. And if they see one, they'll go investigate it before and after. If necessary, they'll go into the future and the past of
Uh,
the theory in different times and see the trend and what's happening in the mental condition on the earth. And there's a book that was delivered to him by these two beautiful Pleiadian women, or Venusian women. called Lady Columba. She was taken to Venus in 657, and she
Uh,
watched a council meeting where they were discussing parallel Earth number four was headed
yeah.
toward a nuclear holocaust in 2065, and that it could
Mm,
not be avoided, and that they were going to make preparations for evacuations and to help the people at that time. And so this beautiful book, I wrote the introduction for it. It's called Lady Columba, Venus Revelations, an Earth woman who lived there from 57 to 61. She came back and she tried to have that book written as fact, and no one would take it. So in
oh,
2015, after Raymond had come back from 3 months on Venus in 2022, um,
uh,
uh, I'm sorry, 2013. In 2015, she landed with another woman, another ascended master from Venus, and she handed him the transcript, and he's really good at putting all these things. So he put this beautiful book together, and the story is, and what really happened was, is they were going back and forth in time, and she said before it was impossible, they wouldn't listen to, our emissaries, and they were dead set on doing what are called stranglet and toplet bombs, which will leave
uh,
the buildings but kill everything and cause fires.
uh,
And and so
yeah,
they precipitated an axial flip. So they were waiting the night before they evacuated star seeds, and those people of sufficient vibration, they were just gone.
yeah,
And people woke up, well, I don't know. And then the bombing started. And soon as the bombing started, it was creating an axial flip with large tsunamis. And they said
interesting.
at that point, they were allowed to evacuate people. She said, when they were on board, then the walls came down, judgment, fear, hatred, bigotry, they were the sluice gates of knowledge could be open because they had destroyed
Sure.
their world. And so they lifted them off for a time, and then they went down, and they came throughout for the next 27 years. It was only 3 years, but they were jumping forward in time and doing very
Uh-huh.
um, insertions of talking to the people and provide helping them with food. There was a lot of radiation poisoning and things like that. So I saw it as
Well,
learning. So this is a parallel Earth, and that goes back to the Montauk Project with the horse. 2065
right.
related to that. So that's a parallel Earth that took place on, but that won't be allowed to happen here. Um, so James said, yeah. I said, uh, I said, did that pyramid help with the auric stench? Because that's what Fred said. They don't like the auric stench. But I got to hang out with Semyasi in Fred's house for some time, and she didn't mind. We hung out for hours. So I
There
guess
you go.
I didn't
Well,
know that.
see, you had a different purpose. My purpose was, and Lee and Wendell and Tom, what our purpose was to come in as investigators, to deal with the physical side and then learn about the other side so that it all made sense. But the timing of it, like we were talking early on in this conversation, of the re-release of all of this information is absolutely perfect because now we can look back and we can say, we couldn't do that then.
Mhm,
Nobody could do it then unless you had a huge special effects house. And even people at ILM said they didn't know how
mhm.
it could be made. So it actually gives it more credence, which gives more substantial credence to the message as well, since it's coming out again now. So
Mhm.
that's the difference of this 45-year time frame and how valuable it was then. Yeah, it kicked a door open a little, but now it has the potential to open it up in a big way, which is great.
I'm so happy with what you're doing and your work with Jamie Masson. Were
Yeah.
you acting like for uh what's it called? Intercept or what was it? The company?
Intercept. Yeah.
Were you working in that way for him as well in that case, or?
Yeah, we came in as investigators with all of the things going on in Mexico and started in 91, still going on today. It's so amazing. Over 10,000 videos.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Great
so
stories.
many people, the whole country was
Yeah, it's
on that
normal
story.
down there. I mean, it's front page on the newspapers. It's on the 6 p.m. news. They talk about it like it's normal. And up here, we never hear a word. It's so sad.
Blackout on it. Yeah. There's UFOs going into active volcanoes.
Popocatépetl.
Yeah.
Yeah, big volcano. Jaime actually set a camera up in Puebla that looks square on at the volcano. And he's got these objects flying in, flying out, um, stopping, hovering. We have images, they're just so amazing. These things going into clouds, coming back out, peaking. On January 1st, 1993, the entire street of Reforma, which is the longest avenue across Mexico City, shut down because people laid back on the hood of their car and watched fleets of UFOs go overhead. Made all the news, front page of the newspapers. We never heard a word.
Yeah. It leaked out somewhere, but it's
Well, we
time.
did 3 videos on it. We did a sightings when sightings was big. We segment produced different sections for their program so that people could learn about it. Because again, at that point in time, we weren't quite willing to open our hearts and our heads totally, but I think we are now. We're
Yeah.
moving forward in the right direction.
Yeah. I think it's wonderful what you've done. And despite the ridicule, you push forward for truth. And,
Yeah,
you know, you know, your beloved Lee's passed over. You're carrying on
yeah,
the torch. You got Tom Welch. Uh,
yeah.
Stevens up there. He's probably in a Pleiadian ship too, or something, looking down now. But
Yeah,
so yeah,
Yeah, Windows probably running the fleet. Yeah.
he's running military operations.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been such an honor.
Oh, thank you.
I hope I didn't talk too much, but your information.
No, it's great to talk because we can exchange. You come from a different perspective than me. I can give you my thoughts, my feelings. You can share that. So I think your audience gets the best of both worlds, and that's wonderful.
Yeah, perhaps we could do another one at some point. I'm really
Sure.
excited to um hear more. Billy went to all these places. The contact notes. Um, I moved away, and I don't know if Fred ever kept them, but I'm sure he got a lot more. But I remember getting like the 250th contact. So much of crazy stuff with him. It must be over 1,000
Oh,
contact. um,
well,
from-
he's still having contact,
He's
and
still
the
writing
notes are
notes.
still coming.
Not really. Is he still writing notes and putting more
Yeah,
information?
he is. He is. They're not all translated like they were because many are more personal and more involved with
Yeah,
things around the farm and things that really don't pertain to anything the Pleiadians are involved with.
right,
So, you know, it's kind of sporadic, but yeah, he is still having contact and still keeping records.
right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the amazing Britt Elders.
Oh, thank
You're
you,
going to
Rob.
have all of her information on my post, her LinkedIn, her Facebook page. Um, you can see her books, her titles are there. You can see her books. You absolutely must go to Amazon now and get this incredible book, UFO Contact from the Pleiades, Volume 1 and 2. And oops, I'm gonna have to show one more here. I
Okay.
we're going to do this before, but I didn't share this. So because of this, I was going to show you this. This is the Battle of Los Angeles, folks. Um, okay, so this is a famous picture uh,
Yes.
back in 1942. They, when the Foo Fighters were going around, the U.S. government thought it was uh, the Germans. The Germans thought it was the English. The English thought it was the Americans. They didn't really understand, but the UFOs were coming in, and Valiant Thor told me, he said, "Yeah, we were just checking out what they're doing." So you see that? I want you to look up here, right up here. Okay,
Uh-huh.
some other pictures I have here. I'm going to show you. This is the same outline of this ship. This is a variation 3, and I don't even think this when year this came in. So this ship wasn't even created. They had gone
No,
back and
it wasn't. Yeah, it didn't come in until 76, I believe.
there you go. So
Yeah.
76 from that time zone, for some reason, Semyasi or someone with that type of ship from the Pleiades goes back to 1942.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of timelines and manipulation for good and bad, and I think there's definitely some rules and regulations there that they don't break. And maybe it's to fix some intruders trying to uh, that cause suffering. Another story for another time. Again, thank you so much. And I'm going to stop the recording now. But
We'll do this again, Rob. Thank
yeah,
you.
thank you. Can I just chat with you just for a brief moment after this?
Sure.
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And let's give a round of applause in your hearts and mind for Britt Elders and this amazing woman. She'll be at Conscious Life Expo. She's got something else in thing, but I'm gonna try and follow her around. I definitely want to meet her down at CLE and get these signed. So
Absolutely.
be down there, folks. Get that book today. You're going to blow your mind and share it with your family who are skeptical. The most well-researched, the most incredible evidence, and don't forget the contact notes if you run it here, the inside story. All the links on my website under the Victory of Light. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.